Well, welcome out there once again to my program. Always a pleasure to be here. I'm always happy to have you out there watching. We're in a new year, and some new things are happening in the city of Fall River. Hopefully all for the good, but we'll eventually find out as time goes by. This is only January. As you know, we have a new mayor. We have a few number of new city councilors and new school committee people. So that always makes for maybe some anxious moments. People want to know what might be held in the future with new people on a job. You know, as you know, there's always a learning part of any job. So they might start off a little slow, but this is winter, and so we hope that by spring we get some better results. What we're going to talk about is the school committee. Well, I should say the school department or school district. And as you know, the superintendent has taken a job in Barnstable. She'll be leaving, I guess, June or July. We'll find out exactly. And in the interim, the school committee will be looking for a new superintendent. So welcome to the program, school committee man, Gabe Andrade.
Glad to be here.
You were on a Diman School Committee at one time.
Yes, I was. Actually, 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years. That was quite a stretch, wasn't it?
It was a long run. Since then, I think a couple of people have overshot that period of time. But at the time, I was one of the few people to have served that long.
That's an appointed position.
It is for Fall River. For the representatives from the towns, those are elected, and this is by the charter of the school.
Now, were you appointed for, we might say, a 2-year period? What was the...
Well, Ed Lambert was the mayor at the time, and what he would often do, in fact, there was an ordinance established after he left, he would appoint you for the first time, and then he would never really renew you, so you served at will.
I see.
And after he stepped down, I believe it was the city council established a new ordinance where any position had to be filled. There was a period of time, I can't remember, it was 6 months, after the person the person's term expired.
So in other words, if you were appointed for 2 years, after 2 years, you either had to be reappointed.
Correct. You had a certain. There was a certain amount of latitude. It might have been 6 months.
After that,
Bob Correa was the mayor when that took place.
What would happen after 6 months?
Well, you had to appoint someone, whether renewing the same person or someone else.
Okay, so you had to go through that, might call a formality. If it was
correct.
The same.
Whereas in the Lambert administration, I think that actually predated Ed Lambert. The mayor would appoint you the first time, and then would just leave you. It was Ed Lambert.
Oh, okay. All right. So now you're on Fall River
yes.
School Committee, and just got reelected. Congratulations.
Correct. Thank you.
You know, and the school, the superintendent has indicated she's leaving.
That's correct.
And that's pretty much chiseled in stone. Could that be reversed?
It possibly could be, but I don't see it happening. Number one, I don't think she's going to change her mind, and number two, I'm not sure that the committee would entertain that very seriously.
All right. And if she did change her mind, and the school committee did care to keep her on, there would be a need for renegotiating her contract.
Absolutely.
And with a new school committee, it might not be, do you think, as favorable as it would have been if the old school committee?
I don't think that the new committee would be as favorable. Now, having said that, a lot of people have the impression that we could not work with her, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. I think most people would take the same attitude that I do, which is, if she proposes someone, if she remained as the superintendent, and she would have proposed something that made sense, seemed to be in the best interests of the district, we would approve it.
Yeah.
If she proposed something that we felt did not make sense or was not to the benefit of the district, we would not. The issue is that she has had the majority, the greater majority of the committee favoring most of what she had proposed in the past, and this would not be so automatic if she were to remain.
Some people, during her negotiations with the Barnstable School Committee, felt that it would be, if she left, practically the end of the world.
Correct. Some people seem to paint that picture. I don't know what we're going to get to replace her, and it's a superintendent search or a search for any position isn't as scientific as some people would seem to think. So it's very difficult to figure out what you're going to get after you look at resumes, after you interview. Sometimes it's still not easy to get to the substance of what this person is. So very often you don't know, particularly if it's someone from outside, you really don't know how that person is going to perform until that person is actually sitting in that chair doing the job. But
now, would you contact, if hopefully the person that does get hired here in Fall River has some experience being a superintendent, but that might not be the case, is that correct?
There are very few people in-house who really have the qualifications or the experience to really be there.
Would you contact, let's say it's a superintendent from Timbuktu,
Well,
applies for the job here in Fall River, would you contact the school committee in Timbuktu and find out how how the person has done?
we could do that. Usually the way it works is you'll put out an advertisement of some sort. However we do that, we will probably hire a firm to help us with that.
Oh, I see.
And it does not have to be terribly expensive. You know, some people think that superintendent search, you're going to spend an obscene amount of money. That's not necessarily the case, depending on what you have the firm do for you. And it could be just a matter of some small advice and no major work. But yes, part of the deal is you may check with people who work in the system that person works in to get an impression.
In other words, might ask the applicant, can we talk to the school committee?
Correct. Now, keep in mind though, if you work in a particular system and you don't like the superintendent, you're probably not going to be that honest if I ask you what you feel about that person.
It's like a landlord bringing in a new tenant. Can I speak to your old landlord?
All right. I want to
say,
get rid of this person in the worst way. Oh, excellent.
Yeah. It's well, it's something anyway. I guess gets considered. Now, there's a school committee. Will the school committee have a you might say a subcommittee searching?
The way it will probably work is, and we had discussed this at the last meeting, is that we will have a larger group, which will not include every member of the committee. We may have, because, and the Attorney Assad explained just exactly what the ramifications are. If you have a quorum or more of the committee sitting on this initial search committee, then that means everything has to be conducted in open session. And if
based under the Freedom of Information Act,
it's the open meeting law.
Okay.
Yeah,
open meeting law.
And if you are applying for a job, you happen to be a superintendent wherever you may be, and you apply for this job, you may not want your current employer, to know that you're applying elsewhere.
So you want to do it
so that if you knew this was in open session, you may not apply.
Yeah.
So the plan is to have maybe 2 school committee men or 2 school committee people sitting on this initial committee, along with a number of different representatives of different groups. Like, for instance, the teachers would be represented, administrators, the principals, parents in the community would be represented, perhaps a member of the business community.
So that could be a big committee.
Students, right. And this is to do the initial screening to maybe narrow down the number of candidates to be interviewed by the full committee.
Now, would this be just reviewing the applications?
Correct.
And then maybe going into an interview stage later?
They could interview, or they may not interview, depending if they felt they had enough information just based on the material that was sent in by the applicants. They could probably pass up on the interview, or they could interview. But this initial group would be doing it in essentially an executive session, so that the names of the individuals would not be going back to their places of employment.
Now, would all the applicants be passed on to the full school committee? In other words, if say 7 people applied, are they all looked at as far as qualifications, et cetera, and then maybe graded and then passed on?
My impression is that the initial search committee would probably whittle it down to a smaller number, which would then go to the full committee for interviews.
Okay, then go to the school committee.
Right.
So,
and that would have to be done in open session.
And by that time, the applicant better make sure they want the job. And
correct.
because,
and that they had talked to the appropriate people in his own or her own community, so that that would be.
Now, was that how it was done with the current superintendent of the Fall River Schools?
No, there was no search. She was the assistant superintendent, and someone made a motion simply.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Finish that.
If you're talking about
no, go ahead.
when
That's
she got the job at Fall River.
Yeah, finish that part.
So she was the assistant superintendent, and after Superintendent Fisher left, someone on the committee simply made a motion to appoint her as the interim superintendent.
And that was it?
And that was it. So there was no search. She simply got the job.
And that was a proper method?
It wasn't improper, let me put it that way. Some people will say that it was not the best way to do things, like Joe Martin, for instance, would say that we should have
as
done
you know,
a search.
Superintendent Fisher, he was brought in front of, you might almost say, a kangaroo court.
Correct, right, at the time that he was pushed out.
Yeah, I mean, he was really needled out of the system. They had like a mini trial.
Correct. And that was only a short time. That was within months of his getting his contract renewed.
Okay.
He had just gotten his contract renewed. Only
some
a few
people
short
felt
months
there might have been something behind that more than the public knew.
It could be.
But anyway, so the current superintendent and her application to Barnstable, that was done pretty much open, in a sense.
It may have. That's what we knew. It's certainly possible that they may have done. They may have had more applicants. I really don't know, and that the initial part of the search was done in executive session. What we do know is that three applicants were interviewed by the full committee.
Now, okay, so here we are in January. She won't be leaving until?
I think it's going to be after June 30th.
Okay, after June 30th. So before then, you'd most likely would have to have, or would want to have someone taking over.
Ideally, we would want to have someone at least ready to step in as of July 1st.
Now, has there been any progress so far? I know it's only January, but has anything, any steps have been taken to secure a new superintendent?
Yes, there were some thoughts put together in terms of what the initial search committee would look like. No names were mentioned. However, I had mentioned a little bit earlier the possibility of 2 school committee people, perhaps at least someone representing the teachers union, someone representing the administrators, a principal, parents, and in fact it was Mr. Martins who made that initial motion, which would include a parent at each level of the system, elementary, middle, and high school.
And this was done in open session?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that, and that's not necessarily closed at that point. That's open. We can tinker with those individuals or those people later on if we so choose. There was a motion made to send out an RFP for anyone that any search firm to do to help us with the search, and that's essentially it. So apparently, according to Attorney Assad, there's about a 2-week period for City Hall to get the RFP out once it's developed. So I would think that probably by the end of the month, the beginning of February, we'll have the RFP out. We should be hearing from firms that are interested, and we just move on from there.
Now, the Fall River School District, call it a district now, right?
Well, you could call it a system or a district. It's interchangeable.
Oh, all right. You have assistant superintendents?
We have one.
One. Okay. So that person, whoever that person is, probably could be...
She could certainly apply.
Be qualified.
Yes.
Being an assistant. All right. So you had a meeting. When was your last meeting?
It was a week ago Monday.
All right. And I understand that school committee man Joseph Martins is going to be the chairman. Is that been decided already?
Of that search committee?
No, the finance.
Oh, yes.
That's
yes.
been determined already?
The mayor named him the chairman of the finance committee, yes.
What is the, let the audience know that Mr. Martins was supposed to be here tonight, but apparently he got held up and cannot make it. So, but we'll look forward to seeing him here in 3 weeks, along with Gabe Andrade, if you so desire. Sure. So, what is the finance committee? That sounds like a big deal committee.
It is. It does a lot of the preliminary work on the budget. There are meetings with building principals who each present what their needs or their wants are, and they will make recommendations on that to the full committee. So it is an important committee.
What do you think is the most important committee that the school committee has?
Well, they're all important to some degree. Finance, if it's not the most important, it's up there with.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I guess the audience would imagine, because of the problems that the city is having financially. That's all you hear about in the news and the commentation is, you know.
It's all money.
But more so than it seems ever before.
Well, I worked in the system for over 30 years prior to my retirement, and it seems like money was always an issue.
Always an issue.
Very rarely was money not an issue. So, so going way back.
What do they say? Money is the root of all happiness?
No, absolutely not.
So, how many people on the finance?
Normally, there are 3 people to each committee. So finance, I did have 3 people during the last term. It will have 3 people again this year.
Now, have they been named, or?
Yes.
Who are the other 2?
I think Melissa Panchley and Mark Costa, I believe.
Oh, so, okay. And who Joe Martins was appointed by the mayor.
Correct.
And how about the other 2? Do they
Also.
They were appointed.
The mayor, as the chairman of the committee, makes
Makes-
all the committee assignments.
Oh, I see, like the city council president?
Correct.
All right. So what what other committees does the school committee have?
Grievances, instruction, evaluation, let me think, facilities and operations. Let me think. There was a new one established by the mayor this year. It's parents and community.
Now, what is the budget currently of the school department?
I believe it's somewhere over 130 million.
130 million. Now, we've heard over and over about net school spending.
Oh yes, ad nauseum.
I mean, when you say 130 million,
Now that doesn't count grants. Grants are an off-budget item, so it's
Okay,
actually
plus-
we actually spend more than 130 million.
okay, plus grants, but basically the city is responsible for the 130 million.
No, we receive we receive some state funding. I couldn't give you an exact figure on how much that is, but it would be over 80 million. It might be 85 to 90 million.
85 to 90 million, so really the state is...
Don't you know,
No,
that's
no.
not set in stone, it's more or less.
Yeah. So of the $130 million budget of the school committee, plus grants, the state is putting in, we'll say 85, 90
Correct.
million, something of that sort. Now, when we add all this up, is this considered gross school spending? Why I ask the question is because in accounting,
Right.
you have gross figures and then
Right.
you have net figures. So a company has a gross income of $1 million,
Right.
but after expenses, they have a net income of $700,000.
I don't believe they put it in those terms. What they look at is there's an operating budget, which is basically the spending for the everyday items that are spent to run the
Pencils,
schools.
books, papers.
Right, salaries, maintenance. Now, there are indirect costs that are usually provided by the city.
Like?
And that would be, for instance, it used to be health insurance. Let me think.
Let me ask you about bus transportation.
Yes.
Is that a direct or indirect cost?
The interesting thing is, we talked about net school spending. The transportation is not counted as net school spending. So that's, when they talk about a net school spending figure, you must spend X number of dollars. The transportation figure is out of that. That's in addition to, because that doesn't count as
Okay,
net
so
school spending.
when they mention net school spending, are they really saying that this is the amount of money that has to be spent?
The minimum.
The minimum?
The minimum.
All right, so if net school spending is $110 million,
Correct.
we'll say, that's the minimum.
The minimum. The state wants you to spend that money.
All right. Now, you mentioned the budget is $130 million, and let's say the city of Fall River can only come up with $125 million in a sense, even with the state aid, and the city's part, it only comes up to $125 million.
That's a potential problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. As a matter of fact, we've dealt with that issue for each of the last 2 years, and even as of right now, there is still money from last that we have to pay out this year to make up for a shortfall last year.
Now, wasn't people told that net school spending had been taken care of in a sense? And
No. There was a carryover from the previous year, was it last year? It almost gets overwhelming. It was from the Flanagan administration, actually, to last year.
So the city still has a problem with this net school spending amount, and it seems to be, has, in other words, dragged on for a number of years.
It has. And the interesting thing also is that sometimes you're not absolutely sure of just exactly what the net school spending figure is. I mean, obviously it's mandated. There's a figure that is mandated in the when you initially set the budget. However, let's say that you don't know what you're going to spend until all the bills are in.
Yeah, it's an approximation.
So you may have underspent or overspent at that point.
Like any budget, you try to put the best figures available into the budget. Let me ask you before we're getting toward the end, class size, is that still a problem?
Absolutely. At elementaries in particular. It's not so bad at the high school or middle school level, but elementaries.
And the other thing is the modern mat.
Oh.
People, I mean, when was that instituted?
Well, that's part of the Common Core, and it's been ongoing for a while. I can't remember how long ago Massachusetts signed on to the Common Core, but it's at least the last 3-4 years or more.
I mean, people constantly complain about it. Their kids are coming home, and parents don't seem to be able to help them because the parents were, went to school with the so-called old mat, which the whole world uses. 2 and 2 is 4.
Correct.
I mean, what is the idea behind this?
Supposedly, it's I'm not completely understanding the whole thing, but the rationale is supposed to be that it would make a student understand the process better. But my own feeling is that that maturity is a big part of it. You may not be ready to understand until you reach a certain age where all of a sudden it clicks in.
Well, when I went to college, I guess we're at the end of the time, but when I was in college, we learned a different system of a mat. Instead of using 10s and 20, 30, 40, we're using like 6, 12, 18 to show that other figures could be used and get to the same result. But that was in college.
Right.
Okay, we're at the end of the program. I hope we enjoyed it. School committee man, Gabe Andrade, gave a nice indication of what's going on in the search for the superintendent. So, have you back here in 3 weeks?
Okay, sounds good.
So we'll be back here in 3 weeks with the school committee man, Gabe Andrade, and Joe Martins. So if you're interested in the school department, make sure you tune in 3 weeks from now. All right then, thank you out there for watching, and we'll see you next time.